My name is Jerry Vasey, and the show is I Can't Write Right? It's been a couple of weeks now since we've seen you on TV. Have you started your story yet, and how far have you gone? I have Ilamae Lund, and she's writing a story. She's written other stories, but the story is coming up. She's writing a book, right?
Oh, yes.
And it's called The Spoonholder. And where did you get the inspiration to write this book?
Well, actually, if I go back far enough, I can claim that the inspiration really started at supper time in my family home when I was a child.
Oh.
And may I read a little excerpt
You
from
may.
this? Okay, this tells it better than I could do otherwise. Supper time was always a great together time in our family, a welcome respite for grown-ups after their long days of back-breaking farm labor. For me, the youngest in the family, it was like a party. Everyone was at the table. Between forkfuls of hearty food, stories peppered this mellow lamplit time after daylight had given way to the unlit rural dark countryside and barn lanterns had been retired to the nails beside the kitchen door, ready for the pre-dawn darkness of morning when they'd again light the way until sunlight intervened. After work was finally done, this was our one reliable chance for sharing the challenging, often curious occurrences of the day. Quirks of nature, unusual feats of strength, instant repairs in the field with no more than baling wire to work with, or sometimes managing a horse with an attitude. It was a cozy time, congenial, a time for laughter and gentle ribbing when every family member was present and I listened and laughed at their stories that I barely understood because I was a part of this wonderful storytelling family circle.
Wow.
So that's it, Jerry. I wasn't planning to write then. I was just sitting in a high chair. But that was the culture from which I came. It was a storytelling culture. Now, I'm descended from Norwegian immigrants. I'm the daughter of an immigrant mother and the daughter of a first-generation American-born father of immigrant parents. Now, those people in the cold Nordic countries with the long Arctic winters when the sun barely showed a few moments of itself for weeks at a time, if they hadn't told stories, I think the Nordics would have become a lost race because they would have killed each other by the end of the winter. Now, my background is from northern Iowa, and northern Iowa had its share of cold winters too. We were snowbound for many, many days frequently during the winter. Nobody had snow blowers then. And a lane that was 1/4 of a mile long, you did not clean with a shovel, a single shovel at a time. So I come from that type of culture, and now that I am interested in writing, of course, I've always been interested in writing, but now that I am writing my own stories, I think back on that supper time. That was our entertainment. All we had in the Depression age was each other. We had each other. Mm-hmm. And if you had any entertainment, you made your own. We sang a lot. We hummed at our work. we taught ourselves to play simple instruments, you know, like the mouth organ,
Oh, yeah.
violins, accordions. And when I decided to put these stories into a collection, I chose the story of the Spoonholder, the title of the Spoonholder, because in the center of that supper time table was this little vessel that held a whole mixture of teaspoons. So if anyone needed it, you know, anyone needed a spoonful to pick up the last bit of gravy or some relish, it was right there.
Now, in your book, you're taking individual stories that you remember,
Yeah.
and they're just a mixture, a potpourri of...
They're in no chronological order. I chose not to tell the story of my life, the story of my life. I was born, I started school, blah, blah, blah. I chose to select the stories that had somehow, for some reason, impacted me, my memory. The poet, T.S. Eliot, wrote a rather substantial poem. And in that poem, the principal character was J. Alfred Prufrock. And J. Alfred Prufrock discontentedly mused, "I have measured out my life in coffee spoons." Well, I studied that poem when I was in college, and of course it didn't connect to this at that time. But when I started writing these stories, I thought that isn't a bad way to measure out your life. Because life for most of us is not big, splendid gulps. It consists of a succession of little coffee spoons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them important for one reason or another, and others kind of fade away. So my Spoonholder consists of the stories that didn't fade away. They are the stories that stayed with me, have stayed with me all of my life.
And I'm sure everybody else has the same...
Absolutely,
experiences.
absolutely. We have really all, in a sense, meted out our lives in coffee spoons. And when I started selecting the ones that I would put into this book, it was quite a discovery to me to realize that the little ones, the little episodes, the little events were the ones that made the cut. The big gulps of my life, important as they were, sometimes shared with a lot of people, they weren't the ones I wanted to write about. There won't be a story about going to the state fair in the Spoonholder. The stories that I gravitated to were the little incidents, the little events, the stories that had heart, the poignant stories. They were the ones that lasted and that had some influence on my character, on the way I looked at life. And so it was very interesting to me to select the ones that would be combined in this book.
Sounds like you had almost as much fun writing it as I'm sure everyone will have reading it.
I did. There have been struggles, of course. To every worthwhile venture, there are struggles. Editing is very wearisome, I should say, rather than worrisome. Rewriting, laborious. But in the end, these stories become a little like your own children. You want to hold them in your hands and hug them a little because a lot of yourself has gone into them. And I covet for everyone viewing this show the richness that comes from that venture. It's a rich experience. The viewers may think they have outgrown their youth, but they haven't. What they need to do is dust it off, give it a good dusting and see what rises, what shines through. And they'll find that their stories are as interesting as my own, and they will belong to them.
And they'll be forever.
Oh, they'll be forever, exactly. As I mentioned in our last show together, there's nothing that really beats the printed page. Cyberspace is wonderful. It keeps the gears of business running, the corporate America going, all of that. But nothing beats the printed page. The book you can hold and hug. In fact, I've dedicated the Spoonholder to my readers. In general, my readers. The people who enjoy reading when they hold a book in their hands.
I know if you see a movie or something like that, and then you're privileged enough to read the book, you get so much more out of it. You get how people thinking and things that you just can't find any other way.
Exactly. And a couple of the stories that did qualify for inclusion into the Spoonholder turned out to be too long to be appropriately included. So I will probably publish them as a single. But it was the same kind of story, a story that made a lasting impression on me. And I'm happy to say that in the Spoonholder, my illustrator, my wonderful illustrator, who has become a good friend of mine, has done all of the illustrations. There are 25 of his illustrations included in this upcoming book, in color, and they're lovely. So I hope it comes out this summer. I have set the publishing date ahead a little bit. I keep pushing it out, but I look for it this summer.
Now, I've heard from several of my guests that an outside editor is critical for when you're polishing up what you wrote to. Is that still so for you?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. Because you live so closely to your stories that soon you overlook the errors that are obvious. There will be obvious errors there, maybe repetitions even. So the best advice that I got in one of the writing seminars that I attended was, for an editor, don't ask a family member. And I think that's good advice too. A family member does not want to hurt the writer's feelings by pointing out the errors. So it's worthwhile, I think, to get somebody who is a professional editor who will circle and strike out and underline and tell you what you've got to fix.
Is that an awful expensive thing for a person to do for their first novel or their first writing?
Well, I guess it depends on your point of view. And it depends on what you want the end effort or the end result to be. Now, I'm a former English teacher, and I sort of like mine to be a little more polished. So my editors, in my opinion, have not been costly. They have various ways of charging for their time. Some of them charge by the word, by the 1,000 words. Some charge by the pages. And I'm sure there are other ways. Now, you can skip that. It's not essential that you do that. As I mentioned in our last conversation together, the one piece of correspondence that I cherish the most, the only piece that I have from my father, certainly was not edited.
That's true.
So, I think you can feel absolutely at ease about writing your own story in your own style. You don't have to publish it. But you have to invest, okay, talk about cost. Invest in a small, loose leaf notebook, a 3-ring binder. Mm-hmm. Not any thicker than that, thin.
That's not very thick, yes.
No, because we're not writing a sequel to War and Peace here. We're writing our own story, and we might not write the whole story. But you need a protective cover, and you need a sheaf of wide-lined notebook paper. Mm-hmm. If you write on the computer, if you're a typist, you can write on your computer. That's easier, of course. You can use your typing paper and punch it to fit into the book. Write it in your style. Write it the way you speak. If you want to publish it and you want other people, the general public, for example, to take you more seriously, I advise an editor. I think that's essential. And my first editor said, take some time and spend some money to have your cover designed. Now, I'm lucky enough to have, this is not the final cover design, but I'm lucky enough to have a daughter who's an excellent graphic artist, and she did the cover design and did the formatting of Holy Cows, and I think it's excellent.
I think it's excellent.
She will do this too. She'll probably make modifications, but anyway, she'll do this too. But you don't have to do that. You can just take a photograph, as I have done here. This is my notebook, and it shows me with the spoon holders. Nobody else will put anything in this.
True.
So when I stop writing, it's my book. Mm-hmm. So you need a place to keep your story that nobody else will use. You need to write it double-spaced, leave a blank space in between so that you can make your own corrections. Don't erase. If you make a mistake, strike it out.
How come?
Huh?
Any reason? Any particular reason?
Oh, absolutely. It's erasing makes you get the false impression that you're writing the final copy. No, this is your draft here, and you will have to rewrite it, of course, or retype it. Hmm. So that's a little bit of procedural.
Do you read what you wrote to yourself?
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
And say, does this sound right?
Actually, if you want to know the truth, I plan to read some excerpts. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I do that today is not to show off my writing. It's really the opposite. It's to show people, the viewers out there, who probably lack the nerve to write their own story. Mm-hmm. Say, oh, I'd like to write the story of my life, but oh, I can't. That's a lot of baloney. Mm-hmm. And so I have chosen some excerpts that really anybody could write. Theirs would be different, of course, but it's. I guess this is my exercise in humility. It's to show that I dare to write my story, that I can honestly make peace with the fact that I'm not a Pulitzer Prize winner. I don't think Spoonholder, I wish it would, but I don't think Spoonholder will make the bestseller list. But that's all right. That's okay. I'm okay with that.
It sounds like it's making your bestseller list.
Oh, well,
Far
of
from what
course.
I can tell.
It's my, well, first of all, Holy Cows is my baby, you know. And well, there was one before this, too. It was a book written during the time or after the time that I had gone through a sustained period of grief. So the main thing, I guess, is to begin. Writing is a venture, a little like exercise. The hardest part of it is the first day when you start. Shall I read some excerpts?
You shall read some excerpts, yes.
Okay. These are just kind of random bits.
That's okay.
They're not the most exciting part, but I've just selected them for different reasons. Okay, here's one. The long, long lane that led to our house could have been a street if you didn't mind the barbed wire fences that bordered it. It was straight enough, and certainly long enough, had it been paved smooth like the streets in town. But as it was today, weeds and grasses grew between the wheel tracks just wide enough to allow our 1919 Dodge passage on its infrequent trips to town. It could even accommodate an occasional rattly farm wagon pulled by a robust team of horses. But today, grasshoppers and other flying insects of hot summer clicked against the wooden fence posts and tall spears of dried grasses, and against my bare legs as I carried our mail down this long lane from a mailbox a half-mile away. That's a paragraph taken from No Known Address.
Oh.
Here's another one. Look, Bob, it's almost time for lunch, and the moon is still out. That's not the moon, silly. That's the sun. The sun? Really? Are you sure? It looks like the moon to me. Well, it isn't. Just come on. We continued toward the hen house with our small baskets of dried breadcrumbs and remnants of cereal to feed the chickens their daily meal. As usual, I had to believe Bob, who explained a lot of life's mysteries to me. A dictionary, encyclopedia, and storybook combined in one person. When not in school, Bob was my constant companion, my protector, my fount of knowledge. Bob was my big sister, whose real name I couldn't yet pronounce properly. When her long, straight hair, black as ink, was drastically bobbed short, someone in the family suggested, jokingly, that I could call her Bob. That seemed the perfect answer to me, and the name stuck for a long time. No one minded the change, not even Bob.
Wow.
That's taken from Moon at Noon.
Whoa. It must have been an overcast day or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think in
Kinda
Vermont, and I think in Vermont, you know what a moon at noon looks like.
We
And
know.
when Bob finally, she got older and she read Whittier's Snowbound to me, a long narrative poem called Snowbound. I wanted to start this, here's a case of editing. I wanted to begin this story of Moon at Noon with a quotation from Whittier's Snowbound. The sun that bleak December day rose cheerless over hills of gray, and darkly circled gave at noon a sadder light than waning moon.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh,
My editor, and here my editor stepped in. She says, no, 1,000 times no. I said, why not? It's a beautiful quotation. She says, they don't want to read the story, they don't want to start reading a story that's introduced by somebody else's writing.
They want yours.
Yeah, right.
We're hitting on about 4 minutes left.
Okay. Well, let's see here. Let's see if I can find some little tidbit here. Here. Heavy gunmetal clouds, chased by a bone-chilling northwest wind, caused Mother to murmur it was an omen, a sign that nature was displeased. We were leaving the family farm forever. Mother did not often cry, but I think she was crying now. At least a few tears slid silently down her cheeks as we drove down our long lane toward the county road on our final departure. But I could share none of her grief. The happy anticipation and hope circling in my head and heart at the time had no room to spare for sadness. Scrunched into the back seat with my mother and several last armloads of kitchen things, only the crowding kept my excitement confined. Our family was moving to a new home in town, to smooth sidewalks and playmates after school, to electric lights in every room, to a post office box one could walk to in minutes. Without further details to go on, I had generated unbridled optimism for this new life that was beginning today.
Whoa.
Even so, I felt it only fair to squeeze a little closer to Mother in hopes of reducing her sadness. It was a good move, and she popped a small horehound candy into my mouth and took one herself. This sharing seemed to bring our opposite views of looking at the day's journey into closer alignment.
Wow. Well,
And,
we're down to 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I have one parting comment to leave with the viewers and with you, of course. I write to tell my personal story, and why I do it is basically for my descendants. But I write because of accuracy. And it seemed important to me to summarize my goals. So here they are. I write to paint my past in true life-giving color, honestly, to revisit the poignant lessons of life that I've learned, and to archive in eternal youth those whom I have loved. Have you ever noticed that when you read somebody's description, they never age? A written description of someone never grows older. So my question is, isn't that a written legacy worth leaving?
It is. It definitely
I think so. And in my opinion, these are the reasons we should each write our own unique life story. And to borrow Nike's slogan, Nike, who manufactures this wonderful court you. Just do it. Just do it.
I'm with you 100%. We're getting ready to wrap up now, but I really appreciate you coming and doing 2 shows.
Yeah.
You have been so entertaining and
My
enlightening, I'll tell you. And you are definitely a bright light in my life. I don't think that this is going to be one of those poignant things I'll always remember. And
I hope.
Hopefully you get to
I
write
hope
down.
so, and I hope that for my books also. There'll be one more at least, God willing, that I write after the Spoonholder, and that will be a self-help book, and based on the time that I had to go through a long, extended period of grief and sadness.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for watching our show. And Ilamae, Lund, thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
Maybe someday when you're thinking of the new show, maybe we can get you back. We're very, very, very pleased to have you here. And as they say, get that story down on paper. Even if you shove it under the mattress and nobody ever sees it again, it's well worth it.
Put a protective cover on it first.
But put a protective cover on it first. Well, thank you very much, and this will end our show for today. And so you guys have a good day, and get that pen out and get that paper out or on the computer. Whatever you do, write something. Thank you very, very much, and good evening.